Your feet are cold, the room is 72 degrees, and your hands are perfectly warm. Just your feet, from the ankle down, and you've already reached for a pair of socks. Almost nobody stops to ask what that cold is actually telling them. But your feet sit farther from your heart than any other part of you, which makes them the first place on your whole body to report a drop in blood flow. After 60, cold feet often aren't a temperature problem at all. They're a delivery problem, and that same shortage can grip your calf in a cramp at 2 in the morning. Stay with me, because I'll show you how to tell the harmless kind of cold feet from the kind that means call your doctor this week. I spent years in emergency medicine, and a lot of what I saw came down to one quiet failure. People who had been reading their own bodies wrong for years. Cold feet dismissed as poor circulation, said with a shrug. Night cramps blamed on not enough bananas. Legs that ached on a walk, so they walked less. Every one of those is a signal, and by the end of this video, you'll be able to trace all 3 of them back to a single place and know which ones you can watch and which one means picking up the phone. Here is the plan. First, I'm going to build you the actual mechanism, step by step, so cold feet and night cramps stop being 2 random complaints and become one story you can read. Then I'll show you how to tell ordinary cold feet from the dangerous kind using signs you can check yourself in about a minute. And then we'll get to the one pattern I most want you to remember, the one people ignore for years, and the simple test you can ask your doctor for by name. So let's start with the blood itself. Think about a garden hose. When the water pressure is strong and the hose is soft and open, the water reaches the far end and comes out of the nozzle with real force. Now let the hose stiffen. Let the inside walls get narrow and crusted. The middle of the hose still runs fine. It's the far end, the nozzle, that goes weak first. Your arteries are that hose, and your feet are the nozzle. They are the farthest point on the whole line, so they feel any drop in pressure or flow before anywhere else does. As we get older, 2 things happen to those arteries. The walls lose some of their spring, the way an old rubber band goes stiff. And in a lot of people, fatty deposits build up on the inside walls, a slow process that narrows the channel the blood flows through. Less room inside, less give in the walls, and the feet at the end of the line start getting less oxygen, less warmth, fewer nutrients than they're asking for. Your heart is still pumping. The blood is still moving. It just isn't arriving with the same force it used to. That's why one part of you can be warm while your feet stay cold. It isn't the thermostat, it's the plumbing. Same pump. Weaker delivery. But there's a layer underneath the plumbing that most people have never heard of, and it changes everything about how you understand cold feet. The inside of every artery is lined with a single living layer of cells, 1 cell thick. This lining is called the endothelium, and for most of the last century, we treated it like the paint on the inside of a pipe, just a passive surface. It is nothing of the kind. That lining is an active organ, and one of its most important jobs is to make a gas called nitric oxide. When your endothelium releases nitric oxide, it's sending a signal to the muscle in the artery wall to relax. And when that muscle relaxes, the artery opens wider and lets more blood through. That's the switch that widens your vessels to send warm blood down to your feet. Now here's the part that matters for you. That lining is fragile, and 3 things wear it down: aging, high blood sugar, and smoking. Every one of them injures the endothelium, and an injured endothelium makes less nitric oxide. Less nitric oxide means the switch gets weaker. The arteries can't open as wide on demand. And the first place you feel that failed switch, again, is your feet, because they're at the end of the line where the margin was thinnest to begin with. So when someone with prediabetes or years of smoking tells me their feet are always cold, I'm not thinking about the temperature of the room. I'm thinking about a vessel lining that stopped opening the door. And this is why cold feet and blood sugar are so tightly linked, even in people who've never been told they have a problem. The CDC estimates that around 98 million American adults have prediabetes, and most of them don't know it. High blood sugar is one of the most efficient ways there is to injure that endothelial lining. Glucose molecules essentially wearing on the inside of the vessels day after day. So for a lot of people, cold feet that showed up in their 60s aren't a separate little nuisance. They're one of the earliest, quietest outside signs that the sugar in the blood has been working on the vessels for a while. That's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to know your fasting glucose number, which under 100 milligrams, DL is normal, 100 to 125 is prediabetes, and 126 or higher is diabetes. Cold feet plus a fasting sugar of 115 is a very different conversation than cold feet alone. Stay with me, because this is where it becomes something you can act on. Not all cold feet are the same, and telling them apart is the single most useful skill in this whole video. So let's build the fork in the road. On one side, you have what I'd call harmless cold feet. The classic version is a spasm response where small arteries in the toes and fingers clamp down hard when you get cold or stressed. You've probably seen it. Fingers or toes that go white, then bluish, then flush red and tingle as they warm back up. This is often called Raynaud's, and here's the thing about it. It usually hits both feet or both hands evenly. It comes and goes with the cold and with stress. And when you warm up, everything comes back to normal. Color, feeling, all of it. It can be annoying, but on its own, it's usually not a sign of a blocked artery. It's an overactive reflex, not a broken pipe. Now, the other side of the fork. This is the cold foot I don't want you to explain away. Ask yourself a few questions. Is it one foot colder than the other and staying that way? A blockage usually isn't perfectly even, so one side running colder and staying colder is a flag. Look at the skin on your lower legs and feet. Has it gone thin and shiny, almost stretched looking? Have you lost the hair on your lower legs and the tops of your toes? Patches where hair used to grow and now doesn't? Hair follicles need oxygen, and when the arterial supply drops, the hair quietly stops growing. And the big one? Is there a sore, a scrape, a small wound on your foot or ankle that just will not heal, that's been there for weeks? Tissue can't repair itself without blood. A wound that won't close on the lower leg is one of the loudest things your circulation can say. One side of that fork you can watch. The other side is telling you an artery is genuinely struggling, and it deserves a real look. So write this down. Even cold, comes and goes, warms up fine, that's the reflex kind. One-sided, shiny hairless skin, a sore that won't heal, that's the warning kind. And that warning kind has a name and a story that I see play out over and over. Gary was 68, a retired mail carrier outside Kansas City. Walked a route for 30 years, then retired and figured the aches were just the miles catching up. He told me his legs hurt when he walked. Not before he started, not after he stopped, but during. He'd get to about the second block, and his calves would start to burn and tighten. So he'd stop, lean on something for a minute, and then the pain would ease and he could go again. His previous doctor had called it arthritis. Gary believed it, so he did the reasonable thing. He walked less. What Gary actually had is called claudication, and it is one of the most misread patterns in medicine. Here's the mechanism, and it fits everything we've already built. At rest, your leg muscles need only a little oxygen, and even a narrowed artery can deliver that much. So sitting or standing feels fine. But the moment you start walking, those muscles need far more blood. Fast. If the artery feeding them is narrowed, it can't keep up. The muscle runs short, starts burning fuel without enough oxygen, and produces lactic acid, and that's the ache, the cramp, the tightness. You stop, the demand drops, the blood catches up, the pain fades. Then it comes back at the same distance every time. Pain on effort, relief with rest, at a predictable distance. That predictability is the whole tell. Arthritis doesn't keep that kind of schedule. A narrowed artery does. Claudication is the calling card of something called Peripheral Artery Disease, PAD, where the arteries feeding your legs are narrowed by the same kind of buildup that narrows the arteries around the heart. And here's why I want it burned into your memory. According to the American Heart Association, PAD affects roughly 1 in 20 Americans, over 50 million of people, and a huge share of them have no idea they have it. It runs quiet. Cold feet, a little cramping when you walk, skin changes you chalk up to age, and because none of it screams, people carry it for years. Gary carried it for 2, and in those 2 years, the most protective thing he could have done, walking, was the exact thing he'd given up because he thought moving was hurting him. It wasn't. The lack of movement was letting the whole thing get worse. Now here's the part you can actually do something with. There is a simple, painless test for this, and you can ask for it by name. It's called the Ankle Brachial Index, or ABI. All it does is compare the blood pressure at your ankle to the blood pressure in your arm. In healthy legs, those numbers are close. When the ankle pressure runs well below the arm pressure, it means the arteries in the leg are blocked enough to drop the pressure by the time blood gets down there. No needles, no dye, just blood pressure cuffs and a few minutes. If you have cold feet plus cramping when you walk that eases with rest, that is the test to bring up. You don't have to know if you have PAD. You just have to know the 2 words, Ankle Brachial Index. Say them to your doctor and let the test do the rest. That, right there, is the thing I'd most want a member of my own family to hear. So if someone you love has told you their legs hurt when they walk and they've written it off, this is the part to send them. All right, let's go back to the other thing that gets you out of bed, the cramp. The night cramp is its own kind of misery. You're asleep, and then your calf seizes into a knot so hard you're on your feet before you're even awake, gripping the bedpost. For decades, the standard advice has been the same 2 words, more magnesium, or more potassium, more bananas, more of some electrolyte you must be short on. So let me tell you honestly what the evidence actually shows, because it's not what most people assume. When researchers have looked carefully at magnesium supplements for nighttime leg cramps in older adults, the results have been underwhelming. Reviews compiled through the NIH have found that in older people, magnesium worked no better than a sugar pill for these cramps. That doesn't mean magnesium is worthless in your diet. It's genuinely important. But taking a magnesium pill specifically to stop night cramps is mostly buying you an expensive placebo. Same story with the idea that you're always just dehydrated or short on potassium. Sometimes low fluid or a medication like a water pill is part of it, and that's worth a look. But for a lot of people, chasing the perfect electrolyte isn't the answer, because the cramp isn't coming from a mineral shortage at all. Here's where our mechanism comes back. Think about a leg that spent the whole day getting slightly less blood than it wanted because the arteries feeding it are narrowed. All day it's running on a thin margin. Then at night, at rest, your circulation naturally slows down even further, and the temperature of the tissue drops. That thin margin gets thinner, and a muscle that's been shortchanged all day, now shortchanged a little more, can tip over into a hard, sudden spasm. I'm not telling you every night cramp is a blood vessel problem, because plenty aren't. I'm telling you that when the cramps are frequent, and they happen in the same legs that feel heavy in the daytime and cold at night, you should read all of it as one message, not 3 separate ones. So, what actually helps the cramp itself? The most reliable thing in the research isn't a pill, it's a stretch. Standing calf stretches before bed, done for a few minutes, have held up better than the supplements. Stand an arm's length from a wall, step 1 foot back. Keep that back heel flat on the floor and lean in until you feel the calf pull. Hold it for about 30 seconds, switch legs, and do it as part of getting ready for bed. Every night, not just the nights after a bad cramp. It's free, it's quick, and it targets the actual muscle instead of your bloodstream. And if a cramp hits at 2 in the morning, standing up and gently walking or flexing your foot upward, toes toward your shin, is what breaks it because you're forcing the knotted muscle to lengthen. One more honest note here, because it matters. Some people get handed a prescription for quinine to stop night cramps. I want you to know that here in the U.S., the FDA has warned against using quinine for leg cramps because the risk, including serious problems with blood cells and rhythm, isn't worth it for something as benign as a cramp. So if a leg cramp ever gets you offered quinine, that's a fair question to raise with your doctor. And if your cramps are brand new, only in one leg, and come with swelling, warmth, or redness in that calf, that's not the ordinary night cramp at all. That can be a clot in a deep vein, and it deserves same-day attention rather than a stretch. Now let me pull the daytime piece together, because the single most powerful thing for the mechanism underneath all of this is the one Gary quit by mistake: movement. When you walk, you do two things for those narrowed arteries. You ask the muscles to work, which over time pushes the body to open up and grow small collateral vessels, little detour routes around the narrowed spots. And you flex that endothelium, the lining we talked about, which is exactly what prompts it to make more nitric oxide and keep the vessels responsive. Here's the catch, and it surprises people. With claudication, the way you improve is by walking to the point of that ache, resting until it eases, and then walking again. Supervised walking programs built on exactly that pattern are one of the best proven treatments there is for PAD. So the pain you were avoiding is done deliberately and in intervals, part of the medicine. Please don't start that on your own if you have a diagnosed heart or artery problem. Do it with your doctor, but understand the direction. For these legs, sitting still is the enemy, and I can already hear the pushback. You live somewhere with no sidewalks, or the winter turns everything to ice, or the summer heat is brutal. That's real, and I'm not going to tell you to walk a route that isn't safe. This is where mall walking earns its reputation: indoor, flat, climate-controlled, and free before the stores open. A treadmill, laps around the inside of the house, a big box store loop, parking at the far end of the lot, all of it counts. The goal isn't distance. It's regular, gentle demand on those vessels, little and often. That's the rule. And yes, what you eat matters to that vessel lining too. I'm not going to hand you a long supplement list because you don't need one. The endothelium does better when your blood sugar is steadier, when you're not smoking, and when your plate leans toward the things that lower the inflammation. Wearing that lining down, leafy greens, olive oil, nuts and seeds, fish, the ordinary stuff. There's a nice piece of biology here too. Leafy greens and beets are rich in natural nitrates, which your body can convert into more of that same nitric oxide we talked about, the molecule that opens the vessels. So a plate of greens isn't just vague healthy eating. It's feeding the exact chemistry that warms your feet. Whole food, most days, beats any pill you can buy for this. If you smoke, know that quitting is, hands down, the highest impact thing you can do for the arteries in your legs. Within weeks of stopping, that endothelium starts recovering some of its function. Nothing else on the list is close. I know some of you are thinking you've heard the walk more, eat greens advice 100 times and your eyes are glazing over. Fair enough. So let me give you the version that's specifically about these legs, not general wellness. The difference here is that with narrowed leg arteries, movement isn't just good for you in the abstract, it is the treatment, the same way a cast is the treatment for a broken bone. And the target isn't a step count on a watch. It's simple. Most days, walk until you feel that ache building. Back off and rest. Then go again. And over months, you are literally training your body to grow new blood supply around the blockage. That's not a metaphor. That's what the collateral vessels are. Let me be clear about when this stops being a watch and wait situation, because getting the urgency right is the whole point. Most of what we've talked about is something you notice, write down, and bring to your primary care doctor. If your feet have started running cold when they never used to, if you've got cramping that comes on when you walk and eases with rest, if the skin on your lower legs has gone shiny or lost its hair, that's a call to your doctor's office to schedule a visit, and it's the moment to say the words ankle brachial index. If it's new and getting worse quickly, ask to be seen this week. And if you can't get in, urgent care can start the workup. Faster and far cheaper than an emergency room for something that isn't an emergency. But here is the one that is an emergency, and I need you to hear it plainly. If one foot or leg suddenly becomes cold, pale, or bluish, painful, and maybe numb, all at once, over minutes to hours, that is not the slow story we've been telling. That can be an artery that has abruptly blocked off, and the tissue below it is on a clock. That is a 911 call. Do not drive yourself. Do not wait until morning to see if it settles. Do not talk yourself out of it, because an emergency room is expensive. I know the cost is a real fear, and I'm not pretending it isn't. But a leg that's been without blood flow for hours is a leg you can lose, and the people who did well are the ones who treated a suddenly cold, painful, pale leg like the emergency it is. Being checked and sent home is a good outcome. That's not wasting anyone's time. Call. Don't drive. Don't wait. Let me bring this all together, because if you remember one thing, I want it to be the pattern, not the parts. Your feet are the end of the line. When the arteries feeding them stiffen and narrow, and when that thin lining stops making the nitric oxide that opens the vessels, your feet go cold because warm blood isn't arriving. That same shortage shows up as cramps at night, when circulation slows and the margin runs out, and it shows up as claudication in the day, the ache that comes on when you walk and eases when you rest. So here's the pattern to hold. Even cold that warms up fine is usually the harmless reflex kind, but one-sided cold feet, shiny hairless skin, a sore that won't heal, or leg pain that shows up at a predictable distance every time you walk, that combination is your circulation asking for a real look. And the two words that get you that look are ankle brachial index. The night cramps you fight with a calf stretch before bed, not a magnesium pill. And the vessels themselves you protect by moving, not smoking, and keeping your blood sugar steady. Here's your one step for this week. Tonight, before bed, actually look at your feet and lower legs in good light. Compare the two sides. Feel the temperature, check for shiny skin or missing hair, look for any sore that hasn't healed. If everything matches, warm enough, even, healthy skin, wonderful, do the calf stretch and go to sleep. But if you find something on that warning list, write it down, and at your next visit, say those two words out loud. If you're on Medicare, that visit can be your annual wellness visit, which costs you nothing, and most people never use it. If someone in your family gets cold feet and cramps and keeps brushing it off as just getting old, share this with them, because the whole point tonight was to trade a little worry for a lot of literacy. Your body was whispering long before it would ever shout. Now you know how to listen. Take care of your circulation, and I'll see you in the next one.